Mr. and Miss Jones, they come to me and they say, hey, Attorney Fenton, we'd like to create a legacy for our children and our children's children. We don't have much, but, I think we have a good foundation to get us started. And I'm like, you're correct, Mr. and Miss Jones, because what we can start with is your home. Whether the home is paid off or not, we can transfer your home into a family trust. Oh, and we do have an investment property too, a 2-flat on the south side or some land in Alabama. No problem. We can transfer your land or your 2-unit on the south side also into that trust. Oh, Mr. and Miss Jones, we can also get you a bit liquid. We can, your retirement accounts, rather than making each one of you the beneficiary of those accounts with respect to one another, we'll make your trust the beneficiary of your IRA as well, and your bank accounts. And what does that mean? That means whatever assets that the two of you own are now consolidated as one. Okay, now Attorney Fenton, now how do we create the legacy? Well, this is how we create the legacy. Rather than doing what we have done traditionally, is just hand over the keys to the castle to the children and hope that they do right. We're not going to do that.
Hey friends, welcome to episode 17 of Sisternomics. My name is Monique Caradine Kitchens, and I sincerely hope that you and your family are safe during this time. Now, at the top of the show, you heard the voice of my guest for today, Ernest B. Fenton, who I actually interviewed long before the COVID-19 outbreak. Nevertheless, the things that we discussed are still very relevant. And truthfully, folks, now is an excellent time for every family to consider implementing the strategies that my guest, Attorney Fenton, will share, especially since many of us have a little extra time on our hands. Now, even though none of us could have imagined our 2020 getting off to this kind of start, the COVID-19 pandemic is proof, ladies and gentlemen, that we should always expect the unexpected, or as the old saying goes, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So as you listen to today's episode of Sisternomics, think about how you can start planning. How can you and your family use this extra time that we have to plan and build your legacy of wealth so that when the unexpected does happen, you have something to fall back on? With that said, let's go ahead and jump into this episode. Now, Ernest B. Fenton is an attorney with a wide breadth of experience in several different areas. He helps people with foreclosures, bankruptcy, estate planning, business matters, and so much more. He's also an author and a radio personality based in Chicago. Now, on his Facebook page, he's always striking up these spicy, thought-provoking conversations. And that's exactly what made me invite him to Sisternomics. Before the COVID-19 consumed all of our timelines, Ernest wrote this on his Facebook page. You getting rich and leaving money in real estate to your children ain't gonna work. You might as well spend it all because your children are going to blow it. If you really want to leave your children wealth, do this. Number 1, purchase a $1 million or more life insurance policy. Number 2, create a family trust. Number 3, the trust should be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. Number 4, the trust should appoint or require a lawyer, financial manager, or someone else that you trust as a co-trustee. Or you can name a trust company like Northern Trust Bank as the co-trustee. Number 5, identify the terms of the trust. The principal funds, for example, of the trust are to be loaned to my children for business investment, education, real estate purchases, or the like. That's just an example, he says. And lastly, he says, this is how we can build significant generational wealth in just one generation. So let's go ahead and listen in as Attorney Ernest B. Fenton breaks down generational wealth building step by step. And trust me, no need to worry. He breaks it down in language that is plain and simple and easy to understand. So here you go. Generational Wealth Building 101 with Attorney Ernest B. Fenton, right here on Sisternomics. Attorney Ernest Fenton, welcome to Sisternomics.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I got to make you laugh real quick.
Okay.
This is season 2 of Sisternomics.
All right.
And you are the very first man to
Oh,
appear.
oh my God. Men have rights too.
Men are people too, but
Men
you're
are
the
people
first.
too.
So you're blazing a new trail, and so I don't want to put no pressure on you or nothing to be an amazing male
I
guest,
love
but
pressure.
listen, I'm really excited to have you on because about a week and a half or so ago, I was just browsing through Facebook and ran across your post. I should tell people that we both have roots in Chicago, and I remember going into a your store in Evergreen Plaza
Yes.
years. That was in the 90s, right?
93, 94. I opened that store. So yes, it was like 95, 96 in that
Oh
world.
my God. So I was doing the news at WVON. So did I interview you for a segment that I used to do called Movers and Shakers? Do you recall
Maybe,
that?
maybe, maybe.
Wow.
Not sure.
That was a long time ago.
Yes.
So we got our roots there. Lo and behold, you have been hosting shows on WVON
Yes.
for the past few years.
Yeah,
So it's a small world.
it is. Full circle.
Full circle indeed.
Yeah.
So I was browsing Facebook the other day and I saw a post that you wrote, and I just want the whole show today just to be around that post. We can literally go line by line. And it's all about building wealth. But
Yeah.
before I jump into the points that you outlined in that post, I want to ask you about your money story. I
Mhm.
always like to find out about my guest's money story. Tell me a little bit about how you experienced money growing up and how that experience may have led into the work that you do today.
It was like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee says the art of Jeet Kune Do is, make a way out of no way. you know. And so yeah, that was my
Mm,
experience with money. Like a lot of black folk, I watched my parents make a way out of no way. And then made a way. So we didn't come into money or any level of stability from a financial standpoint until much later on. I think I was out of high school and had left to the military. I went to the military at the age of 17. So although we didn't know that we were poor, but I understood that we didn't have reserves. So one poignant example, and it came to me about a week ago as I was having a conversation. I realized later on, I was like, you know what? The same shoes that I played baseball in my freshman and sophomore year are the same shoes. I said shoes, not cleats, are the same gym shoes that I went to gym in. And those same gym shoes that I went to gym in are the same shoes that I wore to school. But I didn't know that that was odd. I did see the other kids with cleats and they take off one pair of shoes and they put on another. And then when they were leaving school, they put on another. And I had one pair of shoes for everything. And so that was my experience. And then the other experience that I had, which I did frame, and actually my book, maybe we'll talk about some or reference. In my book, I talk about when I was 15, that's the last time my parents ever handed me money. I had a sit-in it wasn't about, well, I guess it was underlying, it was about money, but I had a sit-in and I refused the one and only time. And I thought I might have been killed, but I wasn't. Clearly, I'm still here. But I refused to go to school my sophomore year because, we didn't do school shopping. So evidently we didn't have the money. I didn't understand that. I'd at least get a couple of pair of pants. And so sophomore year, they were like, nope, can't do it, but you need to go to school. And I was like, I can't go to school. Those same pants I've been wearing. And my father threw downstairs. I slept in the basement. And my father, after a week of me sitting in and not going to school, so I missed the first week of school, a week and a half, I believe, sophomore year, my father came to the top of the stairs. Boy, come here, boy. And I walked to the bottom of the stairs, the little scowl on my face. And he threw $50 down the stairs. And that was the last time, and I didn't know I made up in my mind, but I did at that time. The last time that, I would ask my parents for money, not out of spite, but just out of, desperation and desire for me to be self-sufficient.
mm, wow. Is that part of what led you into this work that you do? I mean, obviously you went to school, you studied law,
Yeah.
but the areas that you specialize in, they all touch in some way, shape, or form wealth.
Yeah, yeah. What how that occurred is in the area that I'm in. I made my name, if you will, in foreclosure defense. Well, I started in real estate, and then it evolved into foreclosure defense, and then that evolved into estate planning, and now it's like estate planning, foreclosure defense, real estate, probate stuff. But growing up again, and these things you don't realize, right? I had a post today about like we take our early dysfunction into our latter years. We take our poor thoughts, as children, and we develop, if you will, and nurture and reinforce those same poor thoughts as adults, and then we lay awake at night wondering why we're poor. So like we don't know where these things arise, but in any event, when I was younger, there was a guy down the street, and I went to work for him, and I was painting a garage. It was red on the south side of Chicago. I think it was in the Beverly area. And I remember painting this garage. We had to scrape and paint the garage. I may have been 11 or 12 years old. And then he told me that this was one of his houses. And that just floored me because I never knew that people had more than one home. And so like the real estate bug hit me at that moment, but it didn't come into fruition or to awareness and manifestation and, conscious thought until my first year of law school. I'm not law school, my first year of college. And I was at Chicago State. And one of my first semester, first year of college in Chicago State, and I was in Econ 101. And then the professor, I think it was an Asian woman, she shared the 3 factors of production. I'll never forget it. The 1990, the 3 factors of production, Econ 101, is land, labor, and capital. And those 3 things function, to create, if you will, capitalism. Those are the 3 economic engines. So everything dealing with money or wealth has something to do with land, labor, or capital. All wars, quote unquote, are fought over land, and then labor, and then capital. And so then I caught on to that land thing. So I connected Econ 101 with that experience of scraping that garage. And I always said to myself that I would make my fortune. I would become rich, quote unquote, with real estate because I knew that was a way to do it.
So I want to come back toward the end of our conversation and connect the dots. I want to find out what you did after you got that last $50 from your father, and then also talk more about how those seeds that were planted in that econ class manifested into what you're doing today. Find out more about that a little bit, but let's jump into this Facebook post. I thought it was fascinating and it was powerful and succinct. And what you said in that Facebook post was this. You said, so you want to leave your children wealth? Question mark. If you want to do that, number 1, and we're going to go line by line. You said purchase $1 million or more in life insurance.
Yeah, that's a big one because it's multi-tiered. So like most, in its most basic form or sense, one guarantee we have is that we will all transition. And a lot of the others, especially wealthy people, they hedge their bets, their financial bets and their children's financial future with life insurance because they know at some point they're going to cash in. The most wealth transfer happens as a result of 2 things: real estate, home. Actually, it's the home, the equity in the home that parents pass to their children, grandparents to their grandchildren, and so forth. But it's in equity in one's home, and it's in insurance. So one of the surefire ways, in particular, anybody, but in particular African Americans, can ensure or give the next generation a leg up is by investing in life insurance. But here's the more complex point that I was making. The more complex point is like how dedicated are we truly to building a financial future for our children? Because that way we know we can't fail. So is it really about us building wealth for our children or giving them a sound foundation? Or is it more so about us trying to prove to ourselves something? And that's the real issue.
That is the real issue. But something like a life insurance policy, you would think is so simple, so fundamental, just outright common sense. Because like you said, everybody is going to die.
Yeah.
But to this day, we still see this phenomenon where somebody passes away suddenly and we have to pass a hat around the whole family to even collect just to bury them, let alone figure out, okay, so who's going to take care of the kids? How are we going to pay for their education? How are we
Hmm.
going to take care of their expenses? It just amazes me that people still don't consider that. And they would look at this suggestion of a $1 million or more life insurance policy as ridiculous or perhaps out of reach.
Yep. Yeah. And again, I think that it's the fact that we don't have the insurance in our community is more a byproduct of some deep-seated issues that we have than it is a financial or strategic decision. So like I'm calling us out on our stuff. We really don't care that much about leaving a sound financial foundation for our children.
Do you see that literally like with the people that you've worked with over the years? That's the conclusion that you've come to.
That is the conclusion that I've come to. We don't. Because if we did, I mean, that's easy. It's simple. I mean, look at the death toll of young or African American men. A healthy man's life expectancy is what, African American, 72 maybe? 72, 73? That's a healthy one. That's a good one. But then how many young people are perishing from, all sorts of various reasons? How about we just place life insurance policies on our children? Yeah, that's the best investment you can make, is to take out 10 life insurance policies on your 10 cousins.
Wow, but it still doesn't happen. So,
No.
number two, you
Yeah.
said create a family trust.
Yes. I say like the Waltons or the Kennedys. Oftentimes you'll hear in whatever US News or whatever Wall Street Journal, they'll say the family's wealth is. The Walton family is worth, X billion or trillion dollars. But we never stop to dissect, like, what do they mean, the Walton family? Are they taking John Boy, Sarah Jane, Tom Parker, and they're adding all of their net worths together? No, what they're talking about in part or primarily is that they consolidate their wealth. So as an example, they'll have a family trust. What is it? The Merchandise Mart? Was that the Kennedys? Merchandise Mart? That's not owned by one Kennedy. That stayed in the family. So I don't know I think it was in the trust. So the Merchandise Mart, as an example, the Kennedy family will have real estate investments as a family. The Merchandise Mart was one of those assets that remained or was owned by the Kennedy family trust, as an example. So the productivity of those investments, i.e. that real estate, then go to benefit the family. So let's just say if there is a net gain, from the investments within the trust of, for math's sake, of 100, and there are 10 beneficiaries or 100 beneficiaries in there, all with a different or varying percentage of interest, they may get a distribution as an heir, but they don't get to touch the principal. They don't get to decide what happens to Merchandise Mart. And then so in that way, the wealth remains within the family, and it's doled out, accordingly.
All right, so make that make sense from the Jones family perspective, or the Williams or the Smiths. Okay, what does that look like? What does a family trust look like for your typical average, quote unquote, Black family on the south side of Chicago or in Philly or, Decatur, Georgia? What would that look like?
What's her name? You said Jones. Can you give her first name?
No.
I need full names. But anyhow, Clara Jones, Sarah Jones.
Right. Yes.
So Miss Jones. So Mr. and Miss Jones. How about that? Okay. So what that looks like is Mr. and Miss Jones, they come to me and they say, hey, Attorney Fenton, we'd like to create a legacy for our children and our children's children. We don't have much, but I think we have a good foundation to get us started. And I'm like, you're correct, Mr. and Miss Jones, because what we can start with is your home. And so whether the home is paid off or not, we can transfer your home into a family trust. And then if we do have an investment property too, a 2-flat on the south side or some land in Alabama, no problem. We can transfer your land or your 2-unit on the south side also into that trust, quote unquote, as an example. So we do have a beginning. Oh, Mr. and Ms. Jones, we can also get you a bit liquid. We can, your retirement accounts, rather than making each one of you the beneficiary of those accounts with respect to one another, we'll make your trust the beneficiary of your IRA as well, and your bank accounts. And what does that mean? That means whatever assets that the two of you own are now consolidated as one. And then when the one of you passes on, whoever is the survivor will inherit all of those assets. Okay, now Attorney Fenton, now how do we create the legacy? Well, this is how we create the legacy. Rather than doing what we have done traditionally, is just hand over the keys to the castle to the children and hope that they do right. We're not going to do that. So when the last of you to survive passes on, the assets that remain in the trust, we will create a council or a board of your children and one or two other people outside of your family, like an accountant, like an attorney, and they're to get together on a quarterly basis and make decisions regarding the assets in that trust. So that 2-unit and that land in Alabama, they don't just get to sell it and split up the money and go buy cars. And what they inherit will in part be dependent on the productivity of the assets that are in that family trust. What it does is it creates a sense of accountability. It requires that they do work. And 2, it keeps them vested in the productivity of that family.
That's really powerful. Okay, so that leads into the next 2 steps that you recommend. The trust will be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy or those IRA accounts that you just mentioned. The trust, you say, will appoint or require a lawyer, financial manager, and someone you trust as a successor co-trustee. You just talked about that.
Yeah.
But this also speaks to the importance of having a will, having a document that you create while you're healthy, alive, full of vitality, that you can make decisions about what can happen. So doing that now, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. See, the trust sort of has supplanted the will. So like all of the decisions in terms of what happens when someone passes on is articulated within the trust.
Got it.
So as an example, a mom and daddy can say, you know what, upon our demise, for the first 2 or 3 years, we don't want any assets sold. So although we're leaving the decision making to the council, to the family, with some third parties at the table as well, we are going to declare some very specific demands, which is 1, you can't sell anything. That's a cooling off period, as an example. It may be a year. So yeah, the trust gives you the ability to do that. And just as a matter of clarification, the trust is the only vehicle that allows you to do that. A will does not afford one the opportunity to manage beyond the grave. You can't tell someone that you leave a gift to via a will what they can do with that gift. Only the trust allows that.
If a person has a life insurance policy, right? They pass away. And you said that the policy, the trust will be the beneficiary of the policy.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at the same time, those families are looking to receive some relief, financial relief in the event of the passing of dad or granddad.
Yes.
But the policy, the trust is the beneficiary of the policy. So does the family still have access to at least a portion of whatever the amount of the policy is to take care of final expenses, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, the trust says all of that.
Okay.
So what I typically advise my clients and what most clients do with me is if the trust will say, first and foremost, take care of any expenses that I have outstanding, any debts that I have outstanding, and pay for my final resting expenses. So that's what the trust says at the outset. Okay. And then it may say, and then like if you have children, well, doesn't matter, children or a spouse or whatever the case may be. And then you'll say, well, give to my children $10,000 each. And let me tell you why I just made that number up. It just depends, right? But I think that's a good number because I said your children and other people who love you and who depend on you in whatever fashion, I'm sure they'll be mourning. And so they may need to miss, I have a few clients who lost their husbands, very untimely, and both of them needed 6 months to a year at least to just take off. So if you're married, say, okay, give to my wife, $50,000 in initial distribution.
Yeah, so because she can't work, she's mourning, she's grieving, she needs time to get it together, etc.
Or pay off my house immediately.
Right. Got it. Okay, so this is very good. A couple things come to mind. Number one, the trust can also say, okay, we're going to make sure the kids' tuition is taken care of. Any expenses can be taken care of, right? But the other thing that comes to mind is I think we need to address a little bit more the mindset thing, which you referenced earlier, because again, you have people who may be listening right now, Attorney Fenton, who are saying, that sounds great and everything, but I don't have much. I have a condo and I own my car, and that's the extent of my assets. That's all I own. So they may feel like all of this that you're discussing right now isn't necessary. This person may have a child or, maybe the caregiver for their parent or whatever, but they just don't feel like they have enough to do all of the things that you're explaining to us today. But they still want to create a foundation for generational wealth.
Right. Yeah, but I say that's why I link life insurance to it. Because I'm like, even if you don't have much, let's just say anyone 55, 60 years of age or younger, or certainly, I don't know when the cutoff is, but let's just say anyone who qualifies for a sizable life insurance policy that's affordable. So if you're in your 40s or your 50s, I mean, you can still go out and get a life insurance policy for $100, $200 a month, right? That's your investment for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So even if you don't have a dollar in the bank, you may not have anything now, but your estate will. That's number one. Two, the home that you own right now, let's just pretend you're at ground zero. That is, you have $0 in equity today. Well, we don't expect you to go tomorrow. Historically, home values increase, they increase in value 6-7% annually. So you live another 10, 15, 20 years, it's zero today, but tomorrow 10 years from now, it could be $100,000 or more. So sometimes we just have to project out a little bit. So you have life insurance and the equity in your home. That alone is enough.
I'm talking to Attorney Ernest B. Fenton, and he's talking to us about the keys to building generational wealth. This conversation came from a post that he posted on Facebook about a week or so ago, and he just listed like 5 or 6 things, point by point, step by step. If you want to build generational wealth, this is how you start. Number 1, purchase a $1 million or more life insurance policy. Number 2, create a family trust. Number 3, the trust will be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. Number 4, the trust will appoint someone outside of the family to manage that trust. And then you talked about this being the steps that people can take who are in their 40s or 50s. But let's talk about younger folks. What is the person that's 25, 30, 35, kind of really just kind of getting started in their career? They're now finally grown, right? What should they be thinking about or doing to establish wealth? They may not have children just yet. What should they be doing?
Lord, praying. No, I'm just messing.
Praying hard too, right?
I don't know, but I think what I did served me well. I don't think that young people should overly concern themselves with, how much money they have. I think that they should practice good habits. And I think, but from a more direct financial standpoint, if you're employed, then yeah, of course, you want to contribute to your 401k, or if you have an IRA, sock some money apart. I think young people, though, should create good habits. I think they should explore. I think they should travel. I think they should learn how to pay their bills on time. I think they should learn how to live reasonably within their means. But what is it called? The planting season and then the harvesting season. So I think when you're in your 20s, you're in your planting season and your what is it called when you're trying to find land? You're trying to find the land to even plant the seed, in your 20s. I want you to be respectful of credit. So I just want you to build those foundational skills. And then if you can sock a little bit of money to the side. And then I think by the time you get into your 30s, then things start to develop for you.
I'm surprised you didn't say that they should be thinking about buying property. I'm surprised you didn't say one of the first things they need to do is start their own business. Because even if you're 25, you still need to be thinking about.
No, start your own business. That's included because I started my business when I was 24. So I'm just saying, but I'm not as focused on, because you have a lot of young people. I think this is also a mistake, right? And these two things are not mutually exclusive, and we'll wrap it up. But we'll articulate what I mean by that. I think the mistake that a lot of young people make is that we put so much pressure on ourselves to get rich. Mm-hmm. And then we lose the value and the richness of life. And we don't have patience. So we're rushing out the gate trying to get rich. And I did that. I rushed out the gate trying to get rich. Now, thank God I had some other foundational skills that I developed, but I wouldn't advise anyone to take the mindset that I took, purely into my endeavors.
What was the consequence for you in rushing out to get rich?
I think I created more heartache and challenges than I had to. And I also think that, it prolonged my development as a man prepared to marry a woman. Like if I would have, I started thinking about marriage and family because those are all elements of wealth. See, that's my point. That's my point.
Powerful. That's a great awareness. Yeah,
that's my point. See, we think that wealth is just money and that like pursuit of money is the strategy to wealth. But actually, oftentimes, Bruce Lee, the art of Jeet Kune Do is to fight, is to not fight. Like, don't fight and fight. The key to being rich is to not fight to get rich. It's to flow and get rich.
The reason I get so charged up about this, Ernest, is because, as a Black woman growing up on the South Side of Chicago, I just did a powerful interview with my parents about money. Because like you said earlier, your money story comes from how you experienced money, what you thought about money, the conversations you heard about money when you were growing up. And we don't realize that we do carry those ideas, thoughts, and beliefs into our adulthood. And most people never do the work to unravel those stories so that they can then create a new story that serves who they are today. That's why they stay up late at night wondering why they're broke, because they're still dealing with thoughts and beliefs that they established when they was 8 years old.
Exactly. And chasing wealth with those poor beliefs.
But the reason I get so charged up is because there's nothing that I want more. Everybody keeps running around saying that Black women control X amount of trillions of dollars in wealth. Well, what does that mean? Is it because we're spending all this money or because we're actually building it so that we could pass down to our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, just like the Waltons did, just like the Kennedys did, just like the Rockefellers did? I want to see us, if we control that much money in spending, imagine if we turned it around and put these things into place that you shared on that Facebook post that night a week and a half ago and started to get our grandkids who I have yet to meet. I'm thinking about my grandkids, and my son is only 16 years old, and I'm already thinking about my grandbabies. I want them to have a foundation so that they can go to school debt-free. I want them to have a foundation so that they can do like Lynette Calfani Cox talked about. Her kids are in college and they already have homes. So they're building equity at 19, 20, 21. And I think that if we as Black women, which is what this show is all about, Ernest, if we as Black women start to think differently about money, then we can change those young Black men being victimized by violence. We suddenly have options, we have freedom, and we have the ability to do the things that currently most Black women don't have the opportunity to do. Why? Because they don't have the wealth or the financial resources to do so.
But let me throw that. Thank you. Great. But let me throw something in there. Okay. This is, okay. And I did a post today on Facebook that cut a few people yesterday. And I talked about the women, who say, oh, I don't need a man, or who have dissension with their daddy or with their children's father. So she has unresolved issues with many, if not many, if not all of the significant men in her life who've touched her, oftentimes with the exception of her son. And here she is as a single woman trying to raise a Black man, and leave to him wealth. It's an oxymoron. It's almost impossible. That's why I said for me personally, based on my experience, there's no powerful strategy, if you will, to create wealth outside of the mindset than it is the family. So it's impossible for a Black woman, Black man, or any of us to create real wealth in our community if we don't resolve the conflicts that we have with one another.
Wealth building includes the idea of building a strong, healthy family.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
we
That's
must.
fair. That's fair. Okay. How would you round out this list that you've given us about how we can establish generational wealth outside of what we've already talked about? What else would you add to the conversation?
You have to bring your children along with you. Speaking to the sister. Okay. Let me speak directly to the sister. Like, you all are super women. So many of you are super women. Because listen, I'm going to talk to the single sister, not the married, working as a unit sister, because the single sister is out in the forefront. It's not the married sister who everybody's talking about.
Right. Right.
She's overlooked. She's dismissed because she has a husband.
Yeah.
The one at the forefront is the Oprah who doesn't have a husband. It's Gail. It's all of those people. She's raising our children, and we pat her on the back. I'm saying, like you gotta bring your children along with you, sister. You cannot be both the man, the woman, his mama, his grandmama, and his all and his everything. And I'm speaking him because that's what I see in my experience. They baby their sons, they raise their daughters. That's why in my opinion, and what I see in the tens of thousands of people that I sat before me in my desk, Black women in particular, that's the story that I hear. They nurture their boys, they coddle their boys, and they raise their daughters. So the Black girls are graduating at record rates. The Black girls are opening businesses at record rates, and the Black men are going to jail at record rates. And you said it yourself, a Black woman has the power in her to impact, if not quote unquote change, all of that. But you gotta bring your children and your Black sons along with you. You have to have an expectation of him when he's 12 or 13 or 14 years old. You got to stop handing him everything and calling him your baby. And he's 25 years old, driving cars, having sex and drinking.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So my point is, you said, how do I round it out? I'm rounding it out by saying, sister, head of household, you got to bring your children along with you. You got to bring your sons and your daughters along with you and have him understand that he's part of the team and that he has a responsibility. And you have to give him responsibility and have consequences, when there's no action in spaces where there needs to be.
That's good. All right. I want to switch gears real quick before we wrap up the conversation. You said in one of your recent shows that the next great financial crisis is going to be student loan debt.
Yeah, in medical.
So student loan debt and medical debt. How can those of us who are parents now avert the crisis or prevent the crisis from affecting our children and the people listening right now who have student loan debt or medical debt? What's a course of action that they can take?
One course of action is asset protection. Like we have to do a better job for those who are in business of separating our business from our personal. Now, that's a mistake I made. I made that in my 20s. That's something I would change. So all of my money, quote unquote, that I was making or not making in business was tied up with all of my money I had or did not have in my personal. So if one house burned down, both burned down. Wow. Right. I'll give you an example. This will hit home. People talk about, Donald Trump filed bankruptcy. And I always clarify, not in defense of Donald Trump, but I clarify because we want to take some solace in the fact that he filed bankruptcy. And I'm like, Donald Trump has never filed bankruptcy. His companies filed bankruptcy. And you follow?
Yes.
That's important.
Yes.
Not in defense of Donald Trump. I want you all to understand that when they file bankruptcy, they're not filing bankruptcy on their house and their car and their lifestyle. They're filing bankruptcy on one of several companies that they're running.
Yes, yes. Keeping it separate, creating a whole different entity and structure so that you have that personal protection. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. And don't mix too much. You got to take care of home first.
But at the end of the day, if I'm sitting up here and I'm 50 with still looking at $40,000 in student loan debt, that's my personal debt.
Right. No bankruptcy on that. Well, you manage it and you still, I can give you, I'll give you a big one. That's why partnership is so critical. if you're in a relationship, I'm going back to that family piece because I think that's the key. If you are in a relationship, if you're married, I mean, one way to insulate yourself from a possible financial meltdown is to separate you from your spouse. So if you are saddled with debt, medical debt, and student loan debt that you're concerned that one day you may not be able to pay, we want to make certain that your spouse is strong. So if you break down, the ship can still sail, and you'll be on that ship.
Right. That's brilliant. Okay, so for people listening who may be listening in Chicago, how can they reach you if they have questions, want to connect with you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
I would say go to my website. You can send messages through my site and just, see what I do. It's attorneyernestfenton.com. And also check out my podcast, attorneyernestfenton.podomatic. And website, you can contact me. My phone number, everything is there, attorneyernestfenton.com.
And then go ahead and mention your book real quick. Tell people they can get that on Amazon, right?
Yeah, you pick up my book. It's called How to Bet on You and Win. And that's what this conversation is about. And it just tells the story, actually, money stories, experiences that I've had and how I've developed, if you will, the mindset that I have. And I share some stories and experiences with clients that will serve people in various areas.
At the beginning of our conversation, you talked about that day your father threw $50 down the stairs to you.
Yeah.
And that was the last time they gave you money.
Yeah.
Everybody listening wants to know. So what did you do to provide for yourself from that point on? You were only 15. What was your next step in making your money?
Let me tell you something right now. Let me tell everybody listening right now something. There are 16-year-olds right now in other countries fighting wars.
Amen. Right.
I think about that. So what I did was I cut grass and I shoveled snow, and I would save my money. That's when I forgot that story. That's why it's good to have these conversations. So if I made, $20, $30 in a weekend, I would save 10 or 15 of those dollars. And I remember I had this brown chest in my little room in the basement that was makeshift room I created with a mattress on the floor. And, I saved like $70, $80 or $100. And then so if I had $60, $70, then I would take $15, $20 and I go buy 2 pair of pants. Back then at Marshall's, they had 2 for $20 sales. So I would go buy 2 pair of jeans. Actually, they were like 2 for $15. Who remembers that? Remember those sales? So every month I would go and buy something with the money that I saved. So I buy 2 pair of pants this month. The next month I'd go buy 3 shirts. So they were like $7 each. So I spend $20, $25 on shirts. And so I made sure I stocked up.
There you go. Thank you so much for coming on with me today.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. So what was your biggest takeaway from the conversation? Listen, I get it. Money and wealth building may not be at the top of everyone's priority list right now. I get that. But this is just a moment in time. And I want you to remember that. This is just a moment in time. And all of this with the pandemic and the virus and everything, it's going to be behind us very, very soon. So I encourage you to not allow COVID-19 to keep you distracted. If you and your family are safe and nobody is sick, nobody is in the hospital, and you have this extra time on your hands, do not allow this to keep you distracted. Continue to do what you need to do to stay safe, follow all the regulations and stay-at-home guidelines, and start to think about the future. Just this morning, I had a conversation with my husband, and he was starting to realize that he was letting all the news about the pandemic affect his mood. And as a result, he was saying that he just felt like he wasn't being as productive as he usually is. You know how the news can do sometimes. It can just make you feel all kinds of ways. So he said, I'm turning off the news and I'm going to focus forward. Those are his words. He said, I'm going to focus forward. Because that's what the successful people are doing right now. They are not allowing themselves to be distracted. They are actually creating new opportunities while everyone else is drowning in worry. So that's what I want to leave you with today. Focus forward. Do all you can to stay safe and healthy while you're indoors. But while you are indoors, plan, be creative, look for opportunities, and focus forward. All right, that's it for me for today, folks. Monique Carradine here. You can find me on all social media. Well, not all. Let me just be clear. I'm not everywhere now. I'm not on Snapchat and stuff like that, not on TikTok. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just go to @MoniqueCarradine on all those platforms. Oh, and Twitter too. By the way, don't forget to get your top 10 list of the things that you can do right now to claim financial power. It is also still very relevant. Just go to sisternomics.net and you can download the list absolutely free. See you next time.